Training camp has begun. It officially begins for the veterans on Friday. So let's talk Calvin Johnson. It was 2 months ago. He came to visit the Raiders at one of their OTAs. Here he is with Mari Cooper. Mari Cooper, all he couldn't help himself but to pick his brain to find out, how do you train? What do you eat? How do you survive the entire season? Because the knock of late on Amari Cooper is he's not finishing the season. And there's no longer concern with him dropping passes so much as him surviving a season. A lot of it has to do with taking care of your body, avoiding huge hits. Derek Carr sometimes hangs it behind the receivers and stuff. So he came out and said, and everyone knows this, that he would like to play for one of three quarterbacks. Two of which are or were in Green Bay, and Rodgers and Favre, and the other one was Derek Carr. You notice there's another guy in this photo collage right here. This guy. Remember, the whole thing about him coming to the Raiders started with just a similar statement. Oh, stop thinking about he's from Oakland and this is their last thing and that's the reason for this and that. I mean, that could be part of it, but he still feels hungry because he wasn't given the ball on the goal line. Then he had injuries the next season. And he wanted to come to the Raiders. Can you imagine that? It was only 3 years ago. No one wanted to come to the Raiders. The Raiders had a team that was basically like the inmates versus the gods. They had an amateur team. They had everyone's leftovers. Everyone's third and fourth wide receivers were the Raiders' number one wide receivers, in other words. And they had lots of deficiencies everywhere else. And it showed. Remember that Rams game? They could score touchdowns left and right on the Raiders' defense. Raiders had very little talent, very little speed, very little of everything. But it's been 2 months. Now, anyone who plays football, especially of late, and Calvin Johnson would fall into that category, probably has a clock in his body. And it's probably itching right now, or ringing. And this is the time where he could be thinking, I just want to do this. I mean, I'm just going to retire. I'm going to retire. I never won a Super Bowl. Never had any real playoff type success in Detroit. I'm just going to let this go. Leave it at that. This is the time those questions are brought up. Now, the arguments against it, the Raiders still have to sign one more rookie who has some legal problems, and Garyon Conley, and they don't have too much salary cap. Here's my argument to that. He would not be coming back for money. He's made money. He's still under contract with Detroit. But they have a salary cap issue themselves, especially if he shows up. If he shows up at camp, they have to pay him, or cut him, or trade him. And the same deal happened with Marshawn Lynch. Now, is someone just going to let him go? Detroit? That's possible. I mean, Marshawn Lynch, surely they had tabs on him. Yes, he was beat up. His style of running, but he was no longer motivated to play in Seattle. And sometimes that creates injuries. If you're half-assing it, if you will. Your heart isn't in it. And he's got new motivation, and I don't believe what Derek Carr said the other day. He's full of it. Where he talks about that video Jack Del Rio posted on Twitter. It shows Marshawn Lynch in a non-contact drill running in between defenders who were obviously whiffing on him. No, he could have broke those tackles, supposedly. I mean, theoretically, but it was a staged video. It was staged, you know. They released certain amount of information to the media for propaganda reasons. So, Calvin Johnson. Why would the Raiders even need him? They've got Amari Cooper. They've got Michael Crabtree. They've got Seth Roberts. They just brought in Cooks. And I'm going to mix his name up with his first name up with everyone. There's a bunch of Cooks. They bring in Cooks, tight end. They brought in Marshawn Lynch. They still have Rashad and Washington. And they got some younger wide receivers. Who knows what happens with them? Mickens and I forget the other guy, the speedster guy that made the team last year. And they brought a big wide receiver in that made a video of him beating his dog. So why do they need this dog? Well, it could have something to do with Amari Cooper. Could have something to do with... It's amazing now, like I said, where the Raiders, compared to 3 years ago, they're actually attracting free agents. And they're actually not pushing the issue with free agents. As Jack Del Rio said, that they're looking to develop a linebacker instead of going out there and signing one. That's what you have to do. If you put a lot of money in a certain area, you've got to develop in other areas. Why would they need him? Amari Cooper to help him along. Even though I think he should be able to help himself along at this point. He should maybe talking to Tim Brown, who avoided a lot of injuries. But then again, Tim Brown, he didn't show up in the big games. I mean, Raiders were hardly in the big games, but he didn't show up in that Buffalo game. He didn't show up in the Super Bowl. You know? Then again, in those situations, Raiders were... And had nothing to do with Poe Jackson. They kind of scheduled their way into the playoffs that year, and in the Super Bowl that year, they had problems playing those type of defenses. They did. Gannon is really was not a deep downfield passer, and they really needed something to shake things up. It didn't help that their starting center decided to lose it the night before, but that's ancient history. The Raiders have turned the corner, sort of. It was a long street, though. It was a long street. Another reason is, don't know if he'll be in any of these pitches. Crabtree. The Raiders love to hide injuries. If you follow the Raiders for a while, they will hide injuries. All sorts of injuries. But anyway, Crabtree last year had some sort of hand or finger injury. And supposedly that's why he started dropping passes. I'm inclined to think he got paid. He was too satisfied. Seth Roberts dropped a lot of passes. Now sometimes it's Derek Carr's fault because he throws very hard. Sometimes he throws behind. So there may actually be an actual need for Calvin Johnson. Like I said, they're attracting these players who actually have experienced some individual success and some team success, who actually want to come to play for the Raiders. It's not just because Marshawn Lynch is from Oakland. He actually wants to play for the Raiders. I think this could come about again. It's 2 months later. You could have the itch. You got to keep up with the Joneses. The Patriots have hired ringers before too. They hired Randy Moss. Randy Moss sucked for the Raiders. He sucked. He was a waste. The Raiders culture right now is way different than the team that Randy Moss was on, though. It was just an awful culture. It settled for less in many cases. And the fans settled for it too. They would defend Randy Moss. I thought they should have just cut him. But they've hired him as a ringer. Calvin Johnson isn't too ancient. I say go for it. It's up to him, though. He's got to talk to the Lions and say, I'm going to show up. I want to be cut, or I'm showing up. Just imagine that. I don't know how it would all play out, especially when the Raiders bring in Lynch. You know, how the offense might change somewhat. They're going to try more power running and stuff like that. They're going to use more tight end sets. Then again, he is a large wide receiver. In certain packages. I mean, I see a need for it. I see a need to gain some advantage over Kansas City, over the Patriots. Just a certain amount of intimidation when the Raiders line up in a 4 wide receiver set on a very big national stage, like in Mexico City. I just think that would be nice. Is it too much? Sometimes it can be too much. I remember the Raiders, at one time they had, I'm going to mix it up, they had Marcus Allen, Eric Dickerson, and Roger Craig on the same team at the same time. They also had Marcus Allen, Bo Jackson, and I don't know who else they had with him, but sometimes it could be too much because in those situations, they don't know what to do with them. And obviously, some of these players are ball hungry. But it would create one more matchup nightmare for defenses. The Raiders already run a pretty prolific offense, but it's not up to the level of the Patriots yet. And you got to remember, there is such a thing as injuries. You have to be able to overcome them. But it'll be real interesting. But I really think he could be getting the bug right now. He's standing next to this guy. He's won a Super Bowl before. He wants to win a Super Bowl. Is he going to do it in Detroit? I say no. He's got to come to the AFL. The AFL. I think he would take less money because he would have no other choice. And someone like him doesn't have to worry about money. He's already got paid plenty of money, and the endorsement deals that would come in, I'm sure they'd fill the void. I'm saying this might happen. All for the reasons stated. That this athlete is retired and he's got unfinished business. This one unretired because he has unfinished business. The Raiders have unfinished business because Derek Carr got injured. There is more need right now to overwhelmingly correct some of these problems. The Raiders haven't won a Super Bowl since Reagan was in office. That was in 1984. Reagan called up the Raiders. I remember it well. I remember watching it with my brothers, and they're ball busting me the whole right before the game. They want the other team, and they want Redskins to win. I don't know exact date it was, but it was right around my birthday. So it's either 13 or 14, and it was incredible. watching that game. It was incredible because Washington was incredible that, 2-year period, the year before and this year, that year. The 82 season, it was strike shortened season, and then 83. Yeah, it's been a long time. 2002 was it was a little different then. I forget what year they brought in Jerry Rice, but that was just one cog that pushed it to the next level. When Gannon on Monday Night Football had that completion percentage or whatever, he was just playing pitch and catch. Well, here's another guy for Derek Carr to play pitch and catch with. With the addition of Cordell Patterson, kick returning. Rashad's already good on punt returns. And he's great out of the backfield, along with Washington. I say do it. I say do it. Pursue it. Because my message to Calvin Johnson is, you're going to leave it at that. You're going to leave it at that. You don't have too many opportunities. Now watch now, he'll join the Patriots. You don't have too many opportunities. And this could be your last opportunity. The window is closing. You got to learn a new playbook. I'm saying it could happen. The itch is on.